I think what we fail to do most in career pivots is that we undervalue our experience and we tend to ignore our skills.
I'm Amy Jo Martin. Welcome to the Why Not Now show. You know that thing you've been thinking about doing? Yeah, that one. Why not now? Have you ever actually taken the time to ask yourself, what's stopping me? Let's talk it through. This is your chance to give that idea the attention it deserves and take action. Each episode, I have a chat with a fascinating person, from entrepreneurs to athletes, celebrities, my parents, rocket scientists, and all walks of life. We talk through a critical time when they've asked themselves, why not now? We dissect that day or even that moment, step by step. Ken Coleman is on the show today. He's America's career coach. He's the #1 national bestselling author of Proximity Principle and From Paycheck to Purpose. He's also the host of the Ken Coleman Show. So what does Ken do? He helps people discover what they were born to do, and he provides practical steps to make their dreams a reality. So Ken is known for getting real. In this conversation, we talk through his personal journey and story and how he had to realize that nobody was going to come and tap him on the shoulder to encourage him to take the next best step for what he was supposed to do, what he was meant to do. He had to do that himself. He had to inspire himself to take action and get his own attention to realize there was nobody else that was going to do this. And in his case, with going after this dream role that he is now in, it was a numbers game. He had to get out a spreadsheet, start knocking on doors, right? Start doing outreach. And I love that because sometimes we forget it's back to the basics. It's a numbers game. You start reaching out to enough people, the percentages of likelihood and conversion go up. And when we are considering these big shifts, one of the things that Ken talks about is that we have to realize there's great value in our experience and our skills, and we undervalue them when we are going through pivots, when we are going through transitions. And so I always like to refer to it as career collateral. You have it. You have to collect upon it, right? And that intellectual capital as well. Even if you're headed into a different category, different industry, it's transferable. So you have to make sure you collect upon that equity. So Ken is a wizard. This is his area. He is so good at helping people get really clear on where they want to take their careers. As many of you know, I'm a huge advocate for Dell Technologies, for the brand, for what they stand for how they operate, and their impact in the world. I'm fortunate, along with the rest of the Renegade team, to have an inside look at their culture, to work with them pretty intimately. And I can tell you this company and their leaders walk the talk. You can learn more about Dell Small Business by following @DellSmallBiz on Instagram and Twitter. And specifically for female founders and entrepreneurs, the Dell Women's Entrepreneur Network, or DWEN as we call it, is running their Dream Tech contest, where your entrepreneurial story could win up to $40,000 in Dell Tech. Applications are open now. You can head to dwen.com/Amy Jo. That's DWEN.com/Amy Jo. And you can learn about everything and apply. Ken, welcome to the Why Not Now show. It's so nice to have you here with me today. And in the spirit of why not now, can you tell me about a time when you had a big decision to make and you had to ask yourself that question, why not now? And you navigated the delta from idea to action.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think it was the moment in my professional life, and it was very personal. I am sitting on the back patio of my Atlanta suburb golf community neighborhood. It was comfortable. I was very blessed, running my own business at the time for the purpose of creating the independence that I would need to make a massive pivot in my life, which is to go from the business world as an executive to move into broadcasting with no degree, no experience, and very little connections, or so I thought. And I had been processing this decision. I had gotten clear that absolutely I knew I wanted to give broadcasting a shot, but I was dealing with a tremendous amount of fear and doubt and pride. Ugh, what an ugly trio of enemies.
Drama.
Yeah. And so what that means is I, for months, had been pretty clear that I wanted to give broadcasting a shot. I didn't know a lot of the particulars, which direction per se to go, but I knew I wanted to do that. And yet I was allowing my fear of failure, fear of the unknown, fear of peers, what other people might say. I was allowing doubt of, do I have enough time? Do I have enough talent? Do I have enough connections? And then pride of just, if I announce this to everybody that I know, are they going to criticize me and, say, oh, Coleman's having a early midlife crisis. So all of that's going on. And for months, I'm sitting basically still, not doing anything, almost as if somebody's going to just come out of nowhere and tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, Coleman, you're really talented. I think you should do this. Because I had made some connections and put myself out there a little bit, but not been seriously disciplined at it. And so I remember that day, Amy Jo, I'm sitting on my back patio. The kids were little, so we'd gotten them up. They get up early at this point. It was like 3 under 3. It was exhausting. They're up at 6 a.m. And so I was working from home at that point. And so we'd already been through the morning routine when I would help Stacy out, kind of get them situated and get going. And so then it was about 8:30, 8:40 in the morning. I'll never forget it. Spring morning, gorgeous birds chirping. I'm out on my back patio, laptop on my lap, getting ready to go towards the work ahead of the day. And I was drinking coffee, and I just got really reflective about how miserable I was running this business for myself. It was just a paycheck. It was just something to take care of Stacy and the kiddos. And I began to kind of commiserate on the clarity I'd had and how the confidence had been lost. I hadn't been doing much. The stuff I had done had not yielded anything. And I was beginning to wonder, was this a bad idea? Is it too late? Beginning to believe some of the lies. And I'll never forget sitting there, and I had a thought, and it really leads. That's why I love the theme of your podcast. I determined at that point that nobody was sitting around thinking about how they were going to help Ken Coleman. Nobody woke up that morning going, that Ken Coleman guy is a diamond in the rough. He's a little older. He's 33, but I think he could be special. And he just needs me to give him a shot. And as silly as that is, that's literally the thought that I had. It was like, I'm acting as though someone is going to do that. And of course, nobody's going to do that. So I remember getting out my moleskin, and I wrote down something that to this day sticks with me. And I share it a lot on the show. And that was, nobody's sitting around thinking about how they can help you. You got to help yourself. Now, when you are helpable, people will help you. But when they don't know who you are, they don't know how they can help you, they're not going to help you. They got enough going on in their lives. And it was that moment when I said, it's up to me. I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to build this. I'm going to have to treat this as though my life depends on it if I've got any shot of making this transition. And that's my why not now. And it was that moment, in that moment where I said, all right, today's the day that I began to get very serious about making connecting the thing I do every day. And I remember going inside, and I still had one of those old school Rolodexes that I hadn't transferred everything over into my Mac. So I had my Mac on my lap, and then the old school thing, I was kind of comparing notes. And I literally spent 2 hours, Amy Jo, going through every contact And then I created my own Excel spreadsheet off the context based on people that I thought might know somebody in broadcasting if they weren't in broadcasting. And it was in that moment that I began to say, all right, I'm going to reach out to anybody and everybody. I'm going to swallow my pride. I'm going to overcome my fear. I'm going to step into the doubt, and I'm going to put myself out there, and I'm going to become my number one promoter. I'm going to become my number one manager. I'm going to go out and do this. And so that was the moment when, for the first time, a dream began to have some real hustle and sweat and tears. In that moment, that was when I said, all right, this is it. I'm going for it. Why not now? Because the other way wasn't working. The passive approach was clearly leading me to an awful pity party, attendee of one, myself, like the human Eeyore. That's what I looked like, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Wow. Okay. So first of all, I appreciate you sharing that very, very first action step, because we can hear stories all day about, this was my moment. Well, what'd you do? Well, I don't really remember. No, to be a why not now moment, it's a memorable moment, right? But that pushing across that starting line. I can picture you with the Rolodex, the old school, and your laptop. So when you said you were rocking on your porch, and I don't know if you're rocking. I don't know if I made that up. I picture a rocking chair. And you said, no, were you rocking?
No, I was sitting on very plush patio furniture, though, feet up. I did have a steaming cup of Joe in my hand. I will tell you that. I was drinking coffee and just pathetic.
And you said, nobody's going to come tap me on the shoulder. And it's so true. We have to learn to push our own buttons because everybody else is busy. It's like looking for inspo on the outside it's not a great strategy because it's not necessarily recyclable. So you get that spreadsheet out, and did you have a crystal clear vision of what you wanted to go to? When you say broadcasting, that can mean a lot. You knew you wanted to be behind the mic. You knew specifically where, or was it this more vague? I think this is the area.
It was very vague, but that day I decided I am going to figure out how to get in and how to win. And the only way I'm going to figure out how to get in and then win, those are two very different objectives, is that I've got to start connecting and get around people that are successful in broadcasting, whether that's producers, directors, on-air talent. I had just been kind of outside looking in going, I'm pretty sure I want to be on the mic. I know I want to do broadcasting, but I wasn't sure if it was sports or politics, to be completely honest. It wasn't hard news, so I knew it wasn't that, but I wasn't completely clear. And I love that you asked that question because as I look back on it now, I had just reached a boiling point for myself where I was kind of disgusted, not kind of disgusted. I was disgusted at myself. Mm-hmm. And it was like I picked myself up by my own pants and was like, come on, Coleman, this is pathetic. Like, you're going to have to get yourself out there and make your opportunities. So that's what it was. So in that very moment, it wasn't like, okay, I'm looking at sports broadcasting. People know. It was like, I started with, who do I know? Now, this is obviously 8-9 years before I ever wrote the book, The Proximity Principle, which is my first best-selling book. And it was all about the right people in the right places, which came from this very beginning moment where it was just about, who do I know that's in broadcasting, or who do I know that I think might know somebody in broadcasting? And so, Amy Jo, my first agenda was make the connections and then just go sit and listen and be a sponge and figure out what's the best way to tackle this thing. I didn't know how to become an actual legit broadcaster. I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And so that was the moment where I was like, okay, I'm now going to make this a part of my daily discipline to connect and to learn and to grow and to do, to connect, learn, grow, do, connect, learn, grow, do. And understand the key here is that connection is always the first thing. And I think sometimes we miss that. And that's not networking, by the way. That's gross and disgusting. I hate those stupid things. And I'm an extrovert on steroids. Okay. I love people, love connecting with people. But connection is about a posture of learning. And so I just set out to go, all right, first thing I'm going to do is learn every different angle possible, every possible path there might be. I kind of need to know that before I strike out.
It's like that curiosity becomes your hobby. It's like a healthy obsession, right? Where
That's
sounds
exactly
like
right.
you just were at ground zero. You were sick and tired of being sick and tired. And sometimes we just have to go there. So your more recent book, From Paycheck to Purpose, this is your seeing is believing with what you've been able to do. You said something that I think is getting missed right now, and I'd love for you to talk more about it. And this is, we see talent fluidity, right? The labor, like that whole world of the Great Resignation, things are moving, things are definitely up in the air with jobs and what it even means to have a career. I work with a lot of people at those seasons of expansion and transition points too, and especially female leaders, executives, founders. And you mentioned your Rolodex. So I think sometimes we think we want to do a 180, and we might, but we might just want to do a 10-degree shift. And that career collateral, regardless, is transferable. And so what did you learn when you were making this shift into broadcasting? One of your pieces of career collateral, of course, was your network.
Yep.
Do you see that too, where it's like, oh, I don't want to start over? It's like, oh my goodness, you're not starting over. Like it's transferable. A lot of this stuff is. Yeah. What are tips that you might have for people who are thinking, I can't start from the beginning again?
Well, I'm glad you bring this up. In fact, I've never been asked that. It's a really insightful way of putting this question. And you're right. Let's first and foremost say what you said is right. You're not starting over. You can use the word pivoting, change direction, whatever you want to use, but you're not starting over, because you're absolutely right. I think what we fail to do most in career pivots is that we undervalue our experience and we tend to ignore our skills. It's like we think of something new and we go, oh, that's a whole different set of knives and forks. It's like, it's a whole different thing over there. And it's not. Skills are very easily transferable. We tend to ignore those. But that's a little bit more of a light bulb for folks when you kind of point it out. Go, wait a second, your skills. I mean, look, if you were in marketing and you want to go into coaching, okay, we've got some skill sets that made you good in marketing. It's going to make you really good in coaching. All right. So people tend to get that one quicker. What I think people tend to overlook is the experience, because skill, you've obviously had experience that developed a skill, but a skill and a talent is a tool. Experience is character and wisdom. That's how I would say. So even if you've never coached before, you don't have the experience of coaching, what you do have is you have the experience of learning how to communicate a marketing campaign or communicate a sales slogan or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And so we go back to that, and it's like, what was the experience like? At one point, I had to learn how to do this. I think of your story. When you started out into social media as a pioneer of sorts, you're going, okay, what experience can you draw on? You may not have done that specific work, but there's some experience where I can draw wisdom, and then I can draw character. And what I mean by character is I can go, hey, I've had to be nervous before. I've had to fake it until I make it before. Or I've had to try something that didn't work, and I've experienced the sting of rejection. Okay, we're going to pull on that experience, which gave me character. And then as I move into something new, I'm actually way more equipped than I realized. So that's how I would break that down. So obviously talent and skill is transferable because it's a tool. If you can hammer a nail, you can also hammer a block of wood into a wall and wedge it in there without a nail. So what we've got to understand is you're absolutely right. We've got such a body of work of character through experience, of talent and skill through experience, that is always transferable, even if the only thing that's transferable is I've started a couple of things before and I was a newbie and I became good at it. And so we can draw, if nothing else, on the memory to allow us to see the character that we can now rely on. And I will tell you, for me, that was absolutely the case, because I was in politics and then I was in business and I was always in a communication kind of thing. And I remember when I first started taking hosting classes, little sports broadcasting school, some of the things that I was in there. I'll never forget, Amy Jo. I was like 33, 34, and all these students were like 22, 23. And 2 weeks in, before they stopped calling me sir and realized that I wasn't an instructor. And, but I was able to do some things that they weren't able to do. And I remember the instructor going, wow, you're pretty good on a mic. You've been on a mic before? And I was like, well, I have. I've emceed some business events and things that I was able to draw on that I would not call broadcasting. But I did have some experience and I did have some talent that was transferable. And I'm glad you brought that up. I think we overlook that. And I think that's the place to be looking at the start is go, okay, wait a second. What am I bringing to the table? Because when we can see, hey, I've got some things here that are going to actually move me along in some areas, and it'll help me mentally and emotionally, right? It steals my mind to go, hey, I've got something to start with here, so that's okay. Mm-hmm. And then emotionally, I'm able not to be, kicked in the teeth all the time when you do stuff that you suck at, that you have to. Mm-hmm. You got to suck at it to be good at it.
It's true. It's true. And I think the timeliness of the dynamics that are happening right now in our world and business, where innovation is not only desired, but it's demanded, fresh eyes can be pretty valuable, right? So for the experts and the masters, they tend to do things the same way because they've worked and they've gotten better at it. But with those fresh eyes of, companies that are looking outside their verticals to find new ways of thinking, like, we don't want the best in this industry. We want the best in a peripheral industry here or something else. We have to remember how valuable that can be. With years of walking the planet with intention and that experience and character behind it.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Right. Like that wisdom, as you talked about. So shifting for a moment, how do you know, Ken, when to make something happen versus let it happen?
I think you know when to let it happen when you've actually done the training, you've gotten whatever the education is. I'm not talking traditional education, but I've got the learning and the knowledge base. So I've acquired that. And now I am practicing with it, or I'm getting experience, or I'm in my, entry level position, whatever the work is. So I've learned what I needed to learn, and now I'm doing what I need to do. So we could call it paying of dues. So when you're in that situation, that's a let it happen, right? Now you've learned what you need to learn, and now it's pretty clear I've got to go gain some experience and develop my skill set. And so I'm on the path of climbing or doing. That's a relax, your time will come, crush it in the present so that we have an opportunity for the next. So I call it winning the now so that you can win in the next. And I think the human condition, certainly young people, and I still struggle with this at 47 because it's a human condition. We always, as soon as we get that now that we desired to get, how quickly are we focused on the next? I mean, my goodness gracious, it's just a human element. And so, we've got to win the now, and then the next will take care of itself. Mm-hmm. John Wooden, the famous basketball coach, the Wizard of Westwood, famously once said, when opportunity comes, it's too late to prepare. And that's a wonderful, wonderful statement that is just oozing of wisdom. And so to your question, when we get one opportunity, before we focus on the next opportunity, we need to do really well in the now. And it is winning the now that prepares us for that next. So focus on that. So that's a let it happen. Now, the make it happen is calling back to my story. I mean, there are times where you don't know what you have to learn, or you're not quite sure what you have to do, or what you have to do has little to do with anybody else but you. So if it's an entrepreneur and you've got this burning passion inside your chest, and you've got to test it, you got to see if it's got something, that's a make it happen. So that's where we're going to go and largely focus on, I've got to come up with the concept. I've got to build a prototype. I've got to put it out there and test it. I got to sit back and listen it. That's you making it happen. So it's very situational, but I think it is absent of, there's not clear things you need to learn and clear things that you need to just settle and do. There's a clear path. That's let it happen. Just walk the path. But when there is not clarity there, you have to make that happen. We got to figure out what the path is. So that's a brilliant question. And it's not black and white, very clear how we apply that. But I think I'm hoping to answer that philosophically. Where there is no way, you must make a way. But where there is a way, walk that way and then let opportunities happen as you do what you're supposed to do, if that's maybe a better way of saying that.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, everyone. If you are digging this podcast, please do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. It just takes a moment and it means a ton to us. The winning the now so you can win the next is a great frame of thinking too, I think. So that the genesis of that question was, there have been seasons in my life where I just, by sheer force of will, I know I can make this happen, right? I've done it before. And so why wouldn't I type thing, or why wouldn't the company, and sometimes that aggressive nature, then you can crash and burn pretty quickly too, right? You might hit a few home runs, but there's a lot of strikeouts as well. And
that's right.
And so constantly calibrating and assessing, okay, is this one of those ease up moments, or is this like, let's foot on the gas? I'm a student of that, a student for life of that. So thank you. When you look at kind of this, you wrote this book, From Paycheck to Purpose. We're in this time where there's been a lot of reflection. I love what you said earlier about, I was reflecting on how miserable I was. Because I think of reflection sometimes we're positive connotation, but no, we all do that. What are the key questions people should be asking themselves right now when they're getting ready to jump the fence? Because there are a lot of people doing it. And sometimes hopping the fence is just the sexy, fun, romantic part. It's not where we're headed. Whether they're wanting to leave their job or do something else or take a different path, what are those key questions that you would encourage them to ask themselves?
Yeah, so many there. I think one of the first ones would be, why am I leaving? I think we're seeing, in fact, it's been reported, they're calling them boomerang employees.
I just read a piece on this. Yeah.
Yeah. They left for the bigger paycheck, and recruiters or hiring managers sold them a bill of goods, and they got there and the culture sucks. And they're like, oh man, I thought the grass was greener, and it's not. So one of the first questions that I would ask is, why am I leaving? Am I leaving something that I don't like? Or or a situation or a circumstance, or am I leaving towards something that I want?
Yeah.
Very important here. Because if I'm leaving something solely because it's a sucky situation, and I have no forethought as to, then I'm just going to leave, and it might work out. Let's call it, could work out, but you could leave, go somewhere else, get a bigger paycheck, and it's not much better. And so here's what I know about promotions. When somebody wants us and hires us from someplace else, we feel good to be wanted. That gets our shoulders back. And then it looks good in our bank account. But I can tell you this about human nature, we get over things pretty fast, and that'll wear off. So my first question is, why am I leaving? And so that allows us to determine, am I leaving because I'm just solely unhappy? Or am I leaving because I see something else that I want to go to, a desired future? You'll still be unhappy, but we don't want to just be leaving because we're unhappy. Because I kind of say, stop, relax. Let's get clear on what we would like to leave to. So that's the first question. Then we want to ask, what kind of work was I made to do? What kind of work was I created to do? Now, this seems, I know to a lot of people don't know me from a hole in the wall, that seems like a pretty lofty, intimidating question. It's not. The way we answer that is, okay, what am I really good at? And this is my core methodology we unpack in the first stage of the 7 stages in the book. And stage 1 is get clear. And I do that by getting very aware of what I do best. That's my talent. Okay. Hard skills, people skills. Then I look at, what work do I love to do? And I'm talking about a task or a role. And I kind of group work into 4 basic categories. So people work, idea work, things work. So you might be tactile and you're working with your hands, fixing an engine or building something, whatever it is, sculpting, painting. So you've got people work, ideas work, things work, and then process work. And that's just kind of a general way to get people thinking, okay, what kind of work do I love to do? Because there is work that we all kind of go, man, I look forward to this. When I'm in the middle of doing this, time seems to stand still. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi of the famed TED Talk calls this flow. And he literally compares it to ecstasy, which is many times obviously focused on a sexual connotation or now a drug, but it is a mental state is what ecstasy truly is. And he calls that type of work flow. Well, there's a third element. So talent is what I do best. Passion is what work I love to do. I love the work. And then all work creates results. So the third element is mission. We all have a sense of mission. And this is speaking to contribution. What do I want my work to produce? And so that is effectively what I'm putting into the world. So we ask those three questions. What am I good at? What do I love to do? What results do I want to produce in the world? And by getting very aware in those areas, we can begin to put that information together. As you know, we created an assessment to help people do this. We do it for them by asking a bunch of questions. We create a purpose statement that says this: I was created to use what I do best, blank, 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 to do work I love, blank, 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 to produce blank, the results that set my heart on fire. So this is the methodology. And so those are the questions. We want to be asking that because in those questions, Amy Jo, are the answers that then give us clues and begin to point out into the world at work. And there are multiple dream jobs for people. There's not just one silver bullet thing. And I think that's what intimidates people about the very phrase dream job or purpose. And I see people on social media in our space that are influencers, have bigger audiences than me, and they poo-poo passion as though it's silly. It's not. Passion alone is misguided. Oh, by the way, so is talent alone, because I can show you the data of how many Wall Street seven-figure earners are committing suicide. They're very talented at their work, but there's no passion. There's no sense of mission. So those are your basic questions to begin to ask. And as you get the answers, you go, oh, okay, I can see intentionality. I can see my unique combination of talent, passion, and mission. All of us have those three elements, but the combination is what makes us unique. And by the way, so many people, Amy Jo, are chasing greatness. And I want people to chase uniqueness, because it is in our uniqueness where we can truly be great and make a great impact. And great impact has nothing to do with numbers, likes, bank accounts. Some of the greatest people in the world are teachers who you don't know their name, and they don't have big Instagram followings, and they don't make a lot of money.
So true. I love that. This is so timely, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. There's a lot of people that are feeling pretty lost at the moment, but they're wanting to make moves. And sometimes we do have to sit down. If you don't want to go left or right, sit down and find, option 3, 4, 5, and 6 first. Thank you. I have a few rapid fire questions for you if you're game.
Let's do it.
All right. What keeps you up at night?
My kids' futures. You just want your kids to find what they love, to make a great impact. That's the biggest pressure I face. Parenting.
Yeah. I have one that turns 3 tomorrow. So I can
my
appreciate
goodness.
that season of your life, having 3 under 3 and going through the big transition when you were in your early 30s. So what's something that you've read recently or maybe seen or absorbed that has caused you to go from inspiration to motivation, to actually being motivated to act? It could be a book. It could be an article, a show, a piece of art.
I read a lot of biographies. I try to read one a month. And I'm reading a book right now about Churchill, The Splendid and the Vile by Eric Larson. And obviously everybody pretty much knows who Churchill is. But reading about Churchill's response in the early days of him becoming prime minister, so the war is already happening. And there's tremendous fear, and it looks like Hitler's going to destroy England and take over. And he's the new prime minister, tasked with the almost impossible to try to somehow stand against Hitler. I mean, France is largely occupied. They're the last thing standing. The United States is not in. They're not helping. FDR is not helping. And I was reading that, and I was just struck by his unwavering conviction that they could, in fact, win, and they would win. And if they didn't win, they were gone anyway. So there was no other alternative. And you're just kind of like, wow, and where am I in my life, in any area of my life? Where am I that convicted to do what I believe is right, regardless of what happens? So I'm processing that. That's really fresh. I don't know that I have any big takeaways on that, but that is something that pops to mind right now. It was very inspiring because that is a zero end game there. It's either win or total destruction.
Wow. That's great. That's a lot to think about for sure. I'll have to check out, especially right now, to be reading that, right? Especially in this very, very moment of where we are.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know. We don't know what's coming to our doorstep is the reality.
Yeah. So true. So when I say the word renegade, who comes to mind?
Johnny Cash. We're in the shadows of Nashville. That was the first name. Chris Christopherson, Waylon Jennings. I mean, there's a lot of country guys, but I love country music. But, boy, that's a fun word. But that's who comes to mind first.
Okay.
I could go industry by industry on that one.
That's great. What about business?
I think Elon Musk. Mm-hmm. I think Richard Branson. I've read a lot about Branson. I love Branson's personal story. Certainly a renegade. Those two popped to mind first. I'll tell you who else I had the privilege of interviewing. She's the nicest person in the world. So it's hard to say renegade when you think of her. But Sarah Blakely, Spanx founder. You want to talk about a renegade. Her story, her backstory is renegade as it gets, but she's such a lovely human being. It's hard to think of her as a renegade.
Yeah, but it's a great point. It's an internal swagger that creates those external results that I think you can't.
Well, she just said, screw the rules.
Which so did Branson, right? He has a book literally that says, I think it's I have it. I read it like years ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
Screw business as usual or something. Yeah, yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So good. Okay, so let's take you back. Final question here for you, Ken. You're sitting on your patio. You're on your cushy, non-moving, non-rocking patio furniture. You're 33. What is that, like 14 years ago? Yep. And you're on that moleskin trying to figure out, what that very next step is, and something has to change. If you could go back and say one thing to yourself in that moment, what would you say?
What you're about to embark on is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done professionally, but it absolutely will be worth all of the pain brought on by failure and rejection. It's way bigger than you. So this isn't about you. It's about the people you're going to have the opportunity to touch and to play a small part in their transformation. So keep your head up. This is way bigger than you.
That's huge. I just love it. I love it. Thank you for bringing us full circle there, and seeing is believing. I appreciate you and your time and wisdom and the important work that you're doing, Ken. So I appreciate you.
Well, you're a bright light who I'm just blessed to know, and thank you for having me. This was so fun. I'm a little extra encouraged by this conversation. So thanks for having me.
Good. That's great. Absolutely. Where should people connect with you?
KenColeman.com is the website for all of the things social and where the show can be consumed and all the other good stuff that you can buy and free stuff too. So check it out.
Go. Well, thank you. And we will be following. We'll be tracking your moves. So take care. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Hit me up on social media to let me know what you think. I'm at Amy Jo Martin on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I want to hear your Why Not Now moments so I can share them on the show. Just send me a note to whynotnow@amyjomartin.com. For show notes and other offers, you can visit amyjomartin.com/whynotnow. And while you're there, don't forget to sign up for my email newsletter for exclusive content and announcements. A big thanks to Rock Salt Music for all of the tunes by the talented John Coggins. And of course, a hat tip to Richard Brewer for editing and producing the show. I'll see you next time. And until then, why not now?